For those of you who have been a part of the series that we've been doing, it's been like, I don't know, a dozen some odd sessions that we've done on this series that we call 5D. Go back and listen to the first one that kind of gives an overview on the 5 dimensions that we're talking about. And basically, the 5D is 5 dimensions to our interior, our personhood, a biblical framework of mapping who we are and what's going on inside of us can be an extremely helpful tool in many ways for recovery for both sides of the room, the betrayer and the betrayed. The 5 dimensions are our soul, our mind, our will, our body, and the social aspect of who we are. The social aspect has 2 parts to it, which is relationships and culture. We talked about relationships last time. Today, we're going to focus on the cultural piece, is where we're going to highlight today. So let me begin with a parable that was shared by David Foster in a commencement speech at a graduation ceremony. And the parable went something like this. There were 2 fish who were swimming along in the ocean, and they passed this old timer, this older fish. And as they passed him, the old timer asked, "Hey, how's the water?" And as the 2 young fish just swam on, after a while, one of them asked the other, "Hey, I got a question. What's water?" And the reason for that parable that Foster shared that day, and the reason I bring it into this session today, is because culture is the water that we're swimming in. And we don't know it. We're not aware of it, just like those fish are wondering, well, what's water? A lot of times we don't understand how culture is influencing us, that we are wet and we don't know it, that we're swimming in this culture and we can't tell where the culture stops and we begin, because our culture is forming us. It's shaping us. It's forming you today. Today, your environment, your culture will be shaping you and forming you, whether you realize it or not. You are swimming in this water, and it doesn't matter if you're aware of it or not. We're wet from our culture. Now, when I say culture specifically, what am I talking about? I'm talking about the things in our environment that are influencing us, shaping us, and forming us. This includes things like media. So, TV, movies, anything you're streaming on any device, news, music, social media is a big one in our culture today, especially the algorithms that drive what shows up on your feed. All the advertisements that you're exposed to every day, whether you're aware of it or not, economics and who we value and don't value in our economy, our political system, our educational system, religious influences, the locker room, the workplace, the gym, basically everything in our environment comprises our culture, and it is shaping us, whether we're conscious of it or not. The type of shaping that it's doing in our lives could be called complex shaping. A metaphor for that would be drops of water hitting a rock. And you would think that that rock is too strong and not pliable for something as light and gentle as drops of water to form or shape that rock. But over time, that constant drip begins to reshape that rock. That is complex shaping. It's multiple messages, multiple inputs coming in all the time from multiple sources that begin to shape who we are. So to better understand culture, I want to detail three things that culture does. Three things about culture. The very first one, culture is pre-reflective. What I mean by that is growing up in our culture as a child, our culture installs ideas before we have the developmental maturity to evaluate those ideas. In other words, by the time we're old enough to evaluate culture, culture has already become our default. Culture is pre-reflective. It is shaping us and forming us before we have the maturity to evaluate it, challenge it, contest it, or replace it. Not only is culture pre-reflective, number two, it is also comprehensive, meaning whether you realize it or not, culture shapes how we interpret everything. Culture is global in its reach inside of us. Culture influences what we determine to be beautiful or ugly, what we call strong or weak, how we understand masculinity, and how we understand femininity. Culture influences how we define success or failure. Culture influences how we define and understand love. Culture influences how we understand sex. Culture is comprehensive. It shapes and forms how we interpret everything in our life, whether we realize it or not. Which ties into the third feature of culture, and that is it is largely invisible. The only people who recognize the culture are outsiders who come into the culture. And it's different from the culture they were swimming in. This water feels different, and they begin to notice things that those of us who are insiders in the culture, we just call it reality. Uh, we don't know anything different. So outsiders are the only ones who can see a culture. Insiders are somewhat blind to it. For example, if you go to Korea or you go to China and you go to a restaurant and on the menu they have fried dog, that would strike you as strange because in our culture, that's not a common or even acceptable food. But in that culture, that's the water they swim in. It's considered to be reality. That's normal. The only other people that begin to see culture are not just outsiders, but insiders who detox from it, who detach, disconnect, and detox, meaning they unlearn it. Then they can take an objective view towards it and see it for what it is and the influence that it has. So it's pre-reflective. It installs a default in us before we can evaluate it. It's comprehensive. It shapes how we interpret everything in life. And it's visible. We're swimming in it and we don't know it. I want to share a powerful verse from scripture that talks about the power of culture and how do we navigate it? What do we do about it? It's found in Romans 12:2. And what it says is it gives a warning. It says, do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed. How? By the renewal of our mind. Four key words in that verse that are doing a lot of work in that verse. Let's unpack one at a time. I want to begin with the word world. In Greek, it is the it's the Greek word aion. And what that refers to is different from the Greek word cosmos, which is translated world. And that's referring to the planet. That's referring to all the planets and the universe and the cosmos, space. But that's not the word that's used here. The word that's used here is aion, which simply means when it says, do not be conformed to this world, this is talking about culture. It's talking about a pattern of behaviors and values of a particular period of time, an era. And that system, that culture, is always opposed to God and what he wants and his values. So the scripture is warning us, do not be conformed to the culture, the pattern of your current day of behaviors and values that are opposed to God and opposed to what he wants. The next key word is the word conformed. In the Greek, the original language of that verse, it's the word schematizo, where we get the word schematic or scheme. This is a strategy. It literally means to be poured into a mold. What this world system, this culture, this era, this pattern of behaviors and values, what it has as a goal is the scheme is to pour us, to conform us into a specific shape, into a mold. And what's true is if you are passive about culture, it wins. You will end up looking largely like everyone else, that you fit the mold. And this verse is saying, do not allow culture to pour you into its mold. It has a scheme, it has a strategy, and if you're passive about it, it's forming you whether you realize it or not. Culture will not ask your permission before it forms you. It will just form you. That's why the average age of porn exposure is right around 8 or 9. Culture didn't ask our permission as parents or our permission as children, whether we would like to be exposed to this. And it's not going to ask our permission. It has a system and a strategy, a pattern of behaviors and values that unless we counteract it, it will pour us into a mold. That is the scheme. Now, this verse talks about the antidote, and it doesn't say willpower is the answer. It doesn't say trying harder is the answer. It says be transformed. That's that Greek word metamorpho, where we get the word metamorphosis. It is the word picture of caterpillar to butterfly, to be completely transformed into something structurally different. So what this verse is saying is the world wants to pour us into a mold, but don't allow it. Instead, be transformed, be completely transformed, a metamorphosis, a structural change that takes place by renewing our mind. So in other words, we need a complete renovation. We need a detox, and we need complex shaping that is happening with truth instead of the world and it shaping us. That's why when Jesus came, one of the main things he taught was, I've got an alternative kingdom that I'm building. It's opposed to the system, the culture of the world. His kingdom and his kingdom values, his pattern of behavior, thoughts, and values for his kingdom is directly opposed to any culture in any given moment in history, in any given location. He came to establish an alternative kingdom that he invited others to be a part of. That is the antithesis of the world system. And that's why it's an alternative kingdom. That it's possible to be a citizen of this planet and an inhabitant of this world, but also dual citizenship in his kingdom, his way of thinking, his way of living, which is countercultural. It is subversive. In fact, he went on to say, if anyone wants to follow my way and be a part of my kingdom, my way of living and thinking, this world will hate you. It will reject you. It will punish you. It will persecute you. Why? Because you don't fit the mold that it's trying to pour you into. With that being the case, I want to take this introduction of culture and this warning from Scripture, and I want to apply it specifically today to how we are socializing boys to become men. Some of you have heard this concept before. It's commonly called the Manbox. What that simply means is, in our culture, our world system, we have a particular mold that we tell boys, this is what it means to be a man, and you need to conform. And if you don't conform, you will be punished, ridiculed, mocked, corrected, rejected, ostracized. When it comes to the Manbox that we're going to look at, a boy who enters into this world is put into this box, and he is trained by everyone around him. This is not just one person that's establishing this expectation for him. This is globalistic. This is holistic. This is coaches. This is teachers. This is peers. This is media. This is movies. This is music. This is mom, dad, siblings, extended family. Virtually everyone around this boy is training him around a very rigid set of rules called the Manbox that he needs to stay inside. You need to conform. And when he does not conform, he will be punished. He'll be punished by other boys. He'll be punished by men. Often he's punished by his dad. Eventually, he'll punish himself. What are some of the features of the Manbox? How are we currently, collectively, socializing boys to become men? Well, here are some of those features. First of all, real men don't cry. Many of us growing up as boys, if we did cry, we received a message from our dad, maybe even our mom or others, to suck it up, don't cry, don't be like a girl. Another tenet is we are not ever to show weakness. Related to that is we are never to ask for help, nor are we really encouraged to help others, but to just be selfishly focused. Why? Because we're supposed to win. Men win. Men are competitive. Real men win. And in order for us to win, others need to lose. Survival of the fittest. We are never to admit fear. If we experience it, we better not show it. One of the worst things a boy can be called that is more offensive and devastating than just about any other concept or term is that you are acting like a girl or you're acting gay. That hits a nerve inside a boy unlike anything else. That's part of the Manbox. That's how we socialize boys to be men the way our culture defines masculinity. We also say that you are to be a provider, that's your role. And so what does that mean when you're a man and you have a family and you lose your job? Often that is such a blow to our concept of who we are as men, because we find our identity in our ability to provide Or what if we're working really hard, working 2 jobs, and we're still struggling to provide and make ends meet for the necessities of life for our family? What does that mean about our masculinity? Are we not real men because we're not able to provide? Men are also expected to always be in control, to have power. And that control is extended to situations, people, and even our partner. We're also expected to never turn down sex. That one of the metrics we use to determine are you a man or not is you should be able to convince women to have sex with you. And for you to be promiscuous is just a sign of masculinity. That if a man ever turned down sex, something is legitimately wrong with him. Also, one of the tenets of the man box is that women are less than men. They are inferior. They are objects. The man box dehumanizes women. They are objectified. They are less than. We are also not to have any emotions. That's a feminine quality. Real men don't have emotions. They're certainly not soft. They're not tender. They don't cry. If they feel sadness, if they feel loneliness, if they feel shame, if they feel depression, if they feel fear, if they feel whatever, those aren't acceptable. There's only one acceptable emotion for a real man, and that's anger. You get a hall pass for anger. Anger is a masculine emotion because it helps you to maintain your control and your power over others. And finally, real men are tough. They're not soft. They're not tender. They can take it like a man. We don't learn this from one person. We learn it from our culture. This is the water that boys swim in. What happens if a boy or a man steps out of the box? What if he does show emotions like fear? What if he does be transparent about his weakness? What if he does ask for help or offers to help others? What if he's not competitive? What if he decides, I'm going to stay a virgin until I get married and I'm going to save my sexuality for my covenant partner? Or I'm going to stay loyal to my covenant partner and I'm not going to be part of the porn culture, nor am I going to be a part of objectifying women. For him to step out of the man box like that, he is going to be ridiculed. He is going to be called names. He is going to be looked down upon. He is going to be ostracized, rejected, mocked, all sorts of things. This is the man box. This is how boys are told through collective socialization. This is what it means to be a man. Stay in that box. Don't leave that box. That's what a real man is. Here's what happens. By the time a boy becomes a man, the box is no longer around him. It's inside of him. He has integrated it. It's how he lives. He's adopted the script and he's living it out. And not only that, now he's perpetuating it. He's more likely to teach these same man box doctrines to others, including his son. So that's why this verse says, do not be conformed to the pattern, the mold of this world, this culture, because this is going to produce a certain kind of man. And the kind of man that this produces, the mold that we are poured into, is not in alignment with what God wants for us as men. Now, if we subscribe to the man box and we live out this script, it's going to cost us. It's going to cost our partners. It's going to cost our family. It's going to cost our community. Here are some of the costs of the man box. Emotional illiteracy. The average man growing up with the influence of the man box, he can't recognize his emotions. He wasn't allowed to. He doesn't understand them. He can't accurately label them and tell you what I'm feeling in a given moment. He doesn't know how to express them in healthy ways. He certainly doesn't know how to regulate them. That's the cost to us men and to those who are in relationships with us, is we are emotionally unintelligent. The second cost, we become isolated. If you are subscribing to the tenets of the man box that says, don't ever ask for help, don't ever admit that you're weak, don't ask for directions, then what do you end up doing? You end up carrying the pain that's inside of you alone. No man is an island, but the man box teaches us to be an island. So what's the result? Men in the U.S. have higher rates of suicide. Men in the U.S. have lower rates of close friendships, and they have a shorter lifespan. The man box is killing us. That's part of the cost. A third one is aggression. That becomes our default. One of the ways that we gain or maintain power and control is through our physicality, which is usually stronger than our partners. And we use aggression. We use anger. We use our aggression to intimidate, to send a message, to either gain or maintain control and power. Basically, the man box tells us there's only one acceptable emotion, and that is anger. And so what do? We take every difficult emotion that comes up and we funnel them through the only one that's acceptable: anger. We become aggressive men who are not safe for a relationship. The fourth cost we don't have the ability to be present. We don't know how. The man box taught us to perform, not be present. Performance is for an audience. Being present is for one person. We don't know how to do that. So we manage this persona, and the whole world is an audience, and we're performing. And even when we enter recovery, we keep performing. We don't know how to have an authentic presence and an authentic voice in a one-on-one setting with another person. So let me give a disclaimer right here. I am not saying in any way that the man box is an excuse. It's an explanation, but it's not an excuse. And men don't use it that way. You know, if you cause harm to your partner, if you act out or whatever, don't say, well, it was the man box, as if it was a passive thing and you're a victim and it acted upon you. Don't use it as an excuse. The man box was a contribution to your choice, but it wasn't a cause. You had free will. You have agency. Not every man who is influenced by this water has sexual integrity issues. The man box is something that we were given. It's something that we inherited. It's also something that we must now dismantle and renovate and replace. We learned this through multiple sources. We now need to unlearn this. Now, I want to talk about one more concept before we close today, and that is how the man box leads in many ways to the basement. The man box is the script. When we live out that script, the logical extension of that is a secret sexual basement. That is us embracing and embodying the script that we learned in the man box. It results in 5 things in the basement. Number 1, sexual entitlement. This is the belief, and by the way, if you had a secret sexual basement, there was entitlement that preceded that. If you had a secret sexual basement, a lot of those entitled beliefs are still operating today. They are covert. You may not be conscious or aware of them, but they are there. And they show up in many ways. For the vast majority of us men, myself included, it's not a question of, do I have entitled thinking? It's, am I aware of it? Because it's there. The man box installed it there. What's the sexual entitled thinking? Men deserve sex just for the fact that they're a man. The man box is the soil from which infidelity, betrayal, and secret basements grow. It leads to entitled thinking, including with our sexuality. The second thing that shows up in the basement is image management. We now begin to live compartmentalized lives. There is a version of us who is upstairs with the wife, family, and others. And there's another compartment, another version of us who's in the basement. And we don't want these two to touch in any way. And we go to great efforts to keep them separate. So we are managing parallel realities. And what we work so hard to do is to manage people's impression of us upstairs. We're willing to sacrifice everything to maintain that image. We keep the basement a secret no matter what. We will sacrifice our partner's reality. We will sacrifice our relationship or marriage. We will sacrifice our children and our relationship with them. We will sacrifice the safety of those who are upstairs, all in the effort to maintain our image. The third thing that shows up in the basement is we don't ask for help. Inevitably, the compulsion escalates. It gets worse. It doesn't get better. But the whole time, we don't stop. We don't ask for help. The self-sufficiency that we were taught from the man box translates to a compulsive behavior that we never ask for help for the vast majority of us men. I only know of a few exceptions. For the vast majority of us men, we do not ask for help until we are caught, till we are exposed. And God leverages that. God uses that. That exposure needed to happen. I believe he helps orchestrate that. And it was an absolutely devastating, traumatic experience for our partners. But it was the only thing that was going to cause us to get help. We were going to maintain that secret, many of us, for the rest of our lives. Another feature that the Manbox ends up showing up in the basement is what I'm going to call conquest mentality. It's the dehumanization of women. That we don't see women as image bearers of God, the Imago Dei. We see them as a collection of body parts. We see them as objects. We see women as sexual prospects that we can conquer. We end up fragmenting them. We don't look at them with all 5 dimensions. We just focus on the body. And that's it. We fragment them. We dehumanize them. We dishonor them. And after we fragment, after we objectify, after we dehumanize them and neglect their other 4 dimensions and only focus on their body, we begin to evaluate them, score them, and use them, and often discard them. That's conquest mentality. The final thing that shows up in the basement that is residue from the Manbox, and this is a significant one, is control or power. That is why there's deception. That's why we lie. That's why we try to do damage control. That's why there are 60 plus IABs, integrity abuse behaviors, that we get from the Manuela model. Every single one of those behaviors have something in common. They are all efforts to either gain or maintain control and power. We were told in the Manbox, a real man has control. A real man has power. Women are less than men. We've now embodied that in the basement. So we deceive. We lie. We try to manage the story, the narrative of our partners. We try to manipulate their reality so that we can maintain control and power. And once this basement has been exposed, oftentimes the IABs increase because we feel like we're losing control, we're losing power, and so we take efforts to gain or maintain power and control. With all of this, what's required? What do we do? What do we do with this socialization of boys becoming men that many of us have been a part of? What do we do that it informed and influenced our choice to create a secret sexual basement? The very first thing that's absolutely required, if you have not done this already, is to be radically transparent about the basement and bring everything into the light. Everything. And then what I recommend is that we replace the Manbox with a circle. What do I mean by that? Some of you have heard me talk about every man needs to have, ideally, a circle of 3. 3 other men in their life, at least 1, but ideally 3, a community that they can be completely transparent with. And that circle can become a subversive community to the Manbox. That circle, that community, that relationship of those men can become the embodiment of the antithesis of the doctrines of the Manbox. So within that circle, we've decided we are going to be countercultural. All the men, all the fish are swimming this way. We're going to go against the flow of culture. This is going to be subversive. This is going to be countercultural. We're going to replace the box with a circle of 3. And in that circle, we are going to hold each other accountable. We're going to create a subculture. And in this subculture, we are going to show emotions. We are going to become emotionally fluent and emotionally intelligent. We are going to be transparent. We are going to do everything that is the opposite of the man box. We're going to admit that we need help. We're going to shine light on our weaknesses and our failures and our struggles. We're going to not use women. We're going to protect and honor women, including protecting them from ourselves. We're not going to treat them as objects. We are going to treat them as the image bearers of God that they are, the daughters of God that they are. We are going to admit fear. We are going to relinquish all forms of control, which include IABs. We are going to make sure that we have a healthy view of sex that is reinforced by that subculture. And we are going to hold each other accountable. And instead of being advocates of the man box who continue to perpetuate it, we are going to be activists against the man box. And we're going to speak out when we see its influences around us. We are going to use our voice to make a difference. So whether it's in a locker room or at work or any setting where women are being devalued and objectified, where porn culture is coming in, we're going to speak up and we're going to say, that's not okay. It's not okay to look at women that way. It's not okay to talk about women that way. I'm not going to be a part of that. And I know that you think that porn is just an innocent, victimless form of entertainment, but let me tell you the destruction and scorched earth that it did in my life. And we began to speak out against the man box. We also began to recognize this window of opportunity that we have with our sons. Do you want your son to become the product of the man box? You just need to do two things. Give him a smartphone and be passive. That's it. The culture, the man box, will conform him to the mold. You don't have to do anything. And one of the main drivers of culture is technology. And so give him a pocket-sized computer that he has 24/7 where he can stream and watch and be exposed to social media and algorithms and everything, and he will become a product of the man box. You don't have to do anything. But as men, when we recognize, when we detach and disconnect, when we no longer participate in social media, when we carefully select the movies that we watch, when we unplug from a lot of the technological drivers of our culture, we don't watch the news anymore. When we distance ourselves and detach and detox from that, we begin to see culture for what it is. We begin to see the fallacy of the man box. But now we need to indoctrinate our sons with healthy masculinity, the opposing virtues of these tenets of the man box. Now, next week, we're going to talk about the girl box. In the girl box, similar to the man box, girls are put into a box at a young age and told, this is what it means to be a woman in our culture. And if they step out of that box, they are punished, they pay for it. And they are indoctrinated to understand that being a woman has certain features to it. That girl box will define next week that girl box makes most women more vulnerable to the basement, more likely to be blind to it, more likely to be gaslit by the entire culture about it. And our culture will re-injure you when you discover the basement. We'll talk about the girl box next time. All right, let's go ahead and pause here. Let me stop the recording right quick.